everybody. David here with Left Reckoning, joined as always by Matt Leck. Hey, brother, how are you doing?
I'm feeling festive, I'm sure.
It's very festive. I've been feeling festive.
Exactly.
I hope everybody has had a nice break and a good time with family and friends, and very happy to be spending a little bit of time with you all during this holiday season in this community too, which means so much to Matt and I. It's going to be a little bit of a fun episode. We're calling it the Left Reckoning 2023 Holiday Special, and we're going to do what we do best, which is talk about some people who we don't like very much. We're going to be going through the much anticipated Left Reckoning Bum Steer of the Year 2023 list. And I was just thinking, because we are going to have to talk about some degenerates and freaks and losers, I'm still feeling in a giving mood, positive mood. You know, Christmas just happened the other day. I think we should at least start with somebody that we do like, somebody who has been giving a lot to the people, somebody who I will say in this video does have a little bit of the Christmas spirit going on right here. And that is Shawn Fain, who we don't really know what our term on this program should be for the good person of the year. We could call him thoroughbred. We could call him badass. Frankly, man, we could just call it the Shawn Fain Award next year for whoever gets it. But we want to take a moment and celebrate all the workers in the UAW and Shawn Fain, who have really pushed, I think, the labor movement forward in a good direction. Just play a couple seconds of him here. I love the post-strike victory look for Fain. He did grow out the beard and the stash. I know you've had some issues with the color correction on a couple of these videos, but
I don't, it's funny to me. I mean, it's so pink. It's so magenta shifted.
It's red, man. It's red.
Look, that's why I said, like, look, Fain being pink ideologically, that's cool to me. Fain being pink visually, okay. I mean, I guess it kind of looks like, I don't know, he's under the weather or something, but I'll take this rosy Fain.
Well, especially here because he has a very rosy message. Here's Shawn Fain's message to workers around the country.
Our message to workers everywhere is simple. The UAW has your back. And our message to the companies is clear. An attack on a worker anywhere is an attack on workers everywhere. If you come after one auto worker, you're coming after all of us. This is a national movement of auto workers fighting for auto workers. We're not going to wait around for them to attack auto workers who are speaking out for a better life. We aren't going to let them silence working class people standing up for themselves. We will use every tool in our toolbox.
And yeah, I mean, I think that as we've said multiple times on the program, very easy for, a character like Shawn Fain to at least initially, ride off into the sunset for a little bit. But the fact that the UAW has sort of taken this victory and just immediately got the ball moving on organizing non-union auto workers across the country, particularly in the South, I think really just shows how deep these commitments are and how wide ranged the ambitions for the UAW are. It's no longer this kind of, hey, we're just going to protect what we got. It's we want more, and we want more. We want these kind of protections and expansions of rights, higher wages for workers across the board, not even just in our industry, but workers across the country in all different kinds of industries. And, we say this a lot. I mean, the politics in this country are pretty bleak. We've been sort of dealing with a loss of, apart from a few folks like honorary shout out to people like Rashida Tlaib and Cori Bush, who have shown a lot of courage and tenacity in the past couple of months. But I think it's really important to take a little moment in the holiday times to honor somebody and a movement in the UAW that has given us all a lot of spirit and conviction and courage and optimism at a time when it could be really easy to get down and become depressed.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, he's not just riding in the sunset, but he's immediately coming to fight for not only like broader labor movement here, but also calling for a ceasefire in Gaza.
Mhm.
with led by Brandon Mencia, another up and coming UAW leader. And that's the sort of thing that like it's not something we should take for granted, and we should celebrate it, because this question of war is one that has massively damaged the labor movement in the past because of
Mhm.
leadership that was not so bold and courageous. And so I 100% hats off to Fain, and I'm also glad. And part of it is like, Biden came to them.
Mhm.
They have not endorsed Biden yet, and they nor should they.
Mhm.
I mean, if they get something and say it's better than Trump, I'd understand that from a movement. But I'll also say, if they decide, our membership decides not to endorse this year, I would absolutely support that too. But either way, they have the prerogative to make a demand like that and a call like that because of the work that all these UAW members have done. And yeah, it's the best thing in politics of the last year.
100%. And, thinking about, sort of looking um, back at the year 2023, it's funny to remember what was sort of going on at the beginning of this year. I mean, most of the conversations were something we're about to certainly get into in a little bit. The failures of the Biden administration to sort of act on the mandate that they got when they beat Trump back in 2020. The reclamation of some of Trump's border policies, and that's even before this most recent negotiation attempt by Biden. Remember, we were talking about this in March when Biden was reinstating a lot of Biden policies. But really, like the big kind of early question of 2023, Matt, if you remember, it almost seems quaint, was who was going to rise up and defeat Donald Trump in the Republican primary, whether or not DeSantis had the riz, as the kids say. And no.
No.
It's almost we made that call pretty early on this program too, that it was going to be Trump. And I think that has certainly been true. And then, I think when it comes to political coverage, I mean, this year, not having some of the, I don't know, unity that comes with like the Bernie Sanders political movement in 2016, 2020, a lot of people felt lost and in the wilderness. And one of the reasons why I figured it was worth sort of starting up and reorienting people towards labor is because I think this was a really telling year when it comes to labor struggle. I mean, we saw significant gains for people. We saw the Teamsters movements. We saw the movements in Hollywood. We saw fights all across the country, and the UAW, I think, being like the crowning jewel of one of the most successful, reinvigorating moments in labor history, at least in recent years. And I also think it was a clarifying moment too, when it comes to the way that certain people think about politics. Certain people consider themselves to be socialists, progressives, or radicals. How they were reacting to some of the most significant mobilizations of working people in both of our lives, right, Matt? Whether or not they were thinking that the role of media should be sort of supporting and growing and building out of these things, or if it was time to sort of hark the same old conspiracies and sellout narratives and all that kind of bullshit. I think it was a very clarifying year. It was also clarifying too, because some of the other progressive people who say things like, well, what we need is unions, what we need is unions. Well, it seems like they weren't too interested in actually spending a lot of time covering these things, because it means sometimes you get in the weeds and it means that you don't get to do the buzzy title and all that kind of stuff. And I think, made some friends and some people who I wouldn't necessarily say are our friends before. Maybe we have more justification for not being friendly now.
Yeah, I mean that is kind of a nice thing of the lines that a situation like Israel-Palestine, it really resets the playing field in a certain way. And there's a number of different events that have happened since I've been covering politics that do this. But like, first of all, like half the so-called challengers to Joe Biden in the Dem primary are Zionist apologists themselves, if not just rabid pro-Zionist propagandists like Bobby Kennedy, calling Palestinians pampered, which with Crystal Ball. And I've appreciated like Crystal. I've appreciated people that have met the moment when it comes to this and actually being forthright about what is the deal with Israel.
Mhm.
And then there's certain people that have not met that moment quite so well.
No, I think we'll at least get to one of them. So I don't know what we want to call that opening, but shout out to the UAW and Shawn Fain and the labor movement as a whole. That's where our focus is going to be, and that's where your focus should.
One note, actually, mid-December, about the December 16th, I think it was, the New Brunswick nurses
Yes.
reached a deal. And my impression of that is, it's not the victory that we would want. And the hope is that you can regroup and fight for that later on, is my sense. But at least, they're not shut out of the strike now. The unemployment was running out, which is, those are the type of material issues that really impinge on people, and why all those things should be really expanded so people have the ability to stand up for themselves.
Mm-hmm. No, 100%. Well, ready, Matt? It's the time for our bum steer honorable mention. There's one guy who it's an easy choice. We got to do it. We'll get to him in a minute. But when looking at 2023, there's a lot of villains, and even people who we're not including on this list. But there was characters like Elon Musk, who, for me at least, represents a real degradation of this country, of American capitalism. And most frightening for me, of the state of Texas and what our future is going to be looking like. He, as people know, in addition to all of his kind of Twitter stuff, which people understandably are upset about, I mean, he has been nothing but a terror on the state of Texas, and has very much found a home within the far right movement. Here's a photograph from earlier this year when he was going down to the border in order to get to do more immigration porn, immigration fear mongering. And I find this to just be an absolutely disgusting photograph. Is just seeing all these people who are desperate, in danger, fearful, confused as to what's going on. And they're just sort of being, pulled out as props for one of the wealthiest people in the world to basically advocate against more migrants coming into the country. Not just advocating for lowering migration rates, by the way. Let's be very clear. What the Republican government here in Texas has been doing has been torturing and attempting to drown people in the Rio Grande. Right. And this is something that Elon Musk has come out in support of, and, is trying to sort of run interference for the just brutal evil that everyone can see through. I find this guy to be somebody who obviously I have a distaste for before that. But there's something really nasty, I think, about coming to a state like Texas in the first place, and also living in like where he lives, right? And he always lies, oh, I'm homeless now. This guy is living in nice places. And sort of being like, oh, the problem in this state is that there's migrants coming into Texas. Of course, with all the irony, knowing that one, he's a recent resident of the state, and two, is not an American by birth either, somebody who came to this country. Truly endlessly disgusting. We also know about the damage that he has done in South Texas with SpaceX, which is continuing to devastate and destroy the environment. Literally just blowing up precious wildlife, sacred lands of indigenous peoples, terrorizing organizers in Brownsville, Texas. And then, of course, what he's doing right here in the Austin area with his factory. Both the Boring Company in Bastrop and his new Tesla truck company, where, as people know, a worker died while building that facility because the conditions were so unsafe and dangerous. And the Boring Company location here in Bastrop, they're just dumping tons and tons and tons of toxic water into our aquifer and water systems here. And just more and more damage. And just as a guy who feels very confident that he can get away with it, and probably because he can, because the state government here doesn't seem very interested in making sure that Texans, both the environment and Texas workers, are protected from a monster like that.
Yeah, I mean, get away with it. The politicians like work for him. They'll track you
It's
down on
embarrassing.
Facebook.
It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing to watch these guys bend over backwards for him.
Yeah.
And also the goofiest thing is when they're fucking talking about how cool the truck looks. That's the thing is like at a certain point I can be like, you know what, politics, politics aside, there's something really embarrassing about watching a Texan sit here and be like, you know what? I think that Tesla truck, that fucking N64 looking abomination, that's a real truck and I'm happy to see made in Texas. Nah, man.
I hope that shit fails so much. Did you see it get stuck in the snow and had to get yanked out by a Ford? The thing is these things are so damn heavy. I don't think people understand, like, it's a different type of activity that you're doing than even taking a combustion engine out there because of how heavy the batteries are. So you need all that power.
The thing is, so you call them parking lot princesses. Those kind of like souped up trucks that like look really big and tough, but don't really have a lot of towing capacity or ability to do like truck stuff. And you would sort of want to call the Tesla truck a parking lot princess, except that it doesn't even look badass. You know what I mean? It doesn't even do the thing that it's supposed to, which is look good.
It doesn't signify truck. It signifies
video game
It looks
boy.
like something. Yeah, it looks kind of like more like a municipal vehicle, like you drive around reading parking meters or something. Like it doesn't. I don't know. Like if it catches on, I might become. I don't like misanthropy, but my misanthropy rating will probably go up a little bit slightly, and I won't like that. I hope it fails massively because I think it's just so stupid. But the thing about it, Musk is like, and as we get into like this, we talk about like the bum steer of the year or whatever. I think people, the book is out on him. Like most people get it with Musk now in a way that was, I think, very confusing to people maybe 5 years ago.
I mean, as a barometer, right? And of course, the right in the state will always say that, like a publication like Texas Monthly, which by the way, it's just like they do good political. I'm not even saying anything bad about it, but it's just a magazine about the state.
Right.
The right wing will always be like, oh, they're a bunch of liberals or whatever. But even Texas Monthly put Elon Musk as one of the runners up for bum steer of the year. And for me, it's like that sort of felt like, okay, like the myth is starting to get penetrated, certainly nationally, but even regionally here. The excitement that a lot of people had is like, oh man, technology's coming to Texas or something like that. I think is going away. Before we get to some of these other figures, I mean, obviously, honorable mention to self-driving cars, which also had a pretty devastating year. Both the Tesla and the Cruise variety. Very happy to find out that those aren't going to be on the streets. Though I have seen a couple around here, even though I thought that they had packed up. And I don't know if somebody was driving.
Francisco, I think.
I'm pretty sure Cruise said that they're packing up operations all across the country, in Austin included. I didn't look close enough to see if somebody was behind the wheel, but I just, I saw a vehicle on the road the other day. But thank God those are off the road. Extremely dangerous, hubris, insane vehicles. 2023 was one that Matt and I dined at that table a lot, looking at the failures of AI and self-driving cars. AI, hopefully will be able to be a proper bum steer in the year soon. Blockchain,
what's
of course.
The funny thing about AI? The funny thing about AI is like Bing has it now, and nothing can like sort of take the gloss off of a technological product than have Windows try to see like, oh, actually we have exclusive control over this. It's like, this is not
actually. I would be
anymore.
curious to see what Bing's numbers are like since that happened. Probably not as impressive as you might expect for this, apparently world historic technology.
That's only getting better.
Other quick ones, obviously the Texas state government, HB 2127, the Death Star bill, one of the most dangerous and frightening things passed, a complete war on the concept of democracy. Remember, for people who don't recall, that's the bill that was sort of told to people as the water break ban bill, which it does intend to do, which is banning basic workers' protection for people that are passed by cities. But it's so much more nasty and disgusting than that. It is a direct war on local democracy in general. So it's trying to frighten and threaten city council members, county governments, local governments across the state of Texas from being able to do what their mandate is, which is to govern, and to set up rules and regulation to make sure that things run well, that workers are safe. And it's a direct attack on the grassroots and progressive movements across the state of Texas that have successfully mobilized around issues from marijuana to bail reform to environmental justice to workers' justice. These little freaks out there love to talk about small government. And all that the Texas legislature has been doing over the past 5-6 years has been massively expanding not just their power, right? You think that'd be what they would want to do, the power of the executive branch of the state of Texas, which has been used for what? To continue waging war on migrants, wasting billions of Texas dollars, trying to run parallel border operations to the federal government. Abbott, I'll tell you one thing. President Joe Biden is very happy to terrorize migrants, as we'll get into it a little bit later. The fact that we're spending more money on that is just continually disgusting, not to mention the human cost of things like the drowning devices in the Rio Grande. So obviously big consideration for those folks for Bump Steer of the Year. But I think in left reckoning tradition, we sometimes have to look at people in the center left to moderate position before we go to the right, because I'll tell you one thing, I don't think that the right wing is really taking too many cues from a program called Left Reckoning.
Well, exactly. Like no one's under the misapprehension that actually Abbott should force women to carry a pregnancy to term or have doctors sweat about it. No one, but people might say look to a progressive leftist about whether the Biden economy is good enough for voters, or if, just for instance, Israel is an apartheid state.
And on that, talking about gaining friends and losing friends, before we get to the big man himself and talk about the Bump Steer of the Year, let's take, I think, the runner-up. I think the closest runner-up. I think the only reason that, the reasons we didn't make this guy the number one is, one, power and influence. Has a lot, other person has more. 2, how recent some of this stuff was. We want to make this a little bit more holistic look at the entire year. And because at a certain point, what more can you say about this? But the other one is none other than John Fetterman, who I think has just exposed himself as a complete and total asshole. And we would just be remiss not to have him at least mentioned in this. Because not only is this somebody who's taking votes and positions that are disgusting, a lot of Democrats do that. That's the thing that they love to do. Right. But what Fetterman likes, and I think is very perverse about him, is he actually takes a specific joy in this new role for himself. So one, as people know, we've covered on this program, he has harassed, laughed at, made fun of veterans, asking for the United States government to not support slaughter in Palestine. He's now just completely ignoring his constituents in the state of Pennsylvania, straight up mocking them. So I don't know, not to be too rosy-eyed about American democracy or anything like that. It's pretty egregious. It's extremely egregious. Even the Republicans, at least will say, oh, you know what? I don't agree with you, sir, but, we're happy to hear you talk to us. I mean, these guys are straight up being antagonistic to their own constituents. But then there's this whole other layer here where now John Fetterman is not saying, not only we already knew, as Ben Burgess wrote about very well when he was running for Senate, that Fetterman's always been awful on Israel. So this isn't a heel turn. But the real heel turn, I think, has been not only is he going to maintain these kind of brutal positions that he's having, he's now denying the fact that he was ever a progressive, which, hey, I'm glad that you knocked that out for us. And let's just hear it in his own words, because he put up this video and I think that it might be fun to sort of look at the lies here. But here's a clip that John Fetterman put out saying, I'm not a progressive, I'm just a Democrat. But here it is.
Fetterman is overwhelmingly the favorite to win what could be the
Sorry, I Matt Lecked y'all.
Fetterman is overwhelmingly the favorite to win what could be the Democrats' best chance at flipping a Senate seat, with more than half of the registered Democrats in the state saying they plan to vote for him.
Are you a progressive?
No, I'm just a Democrat that has always run on what I believe and know to be true. And 6 years ago, that was considered progressive. But now there isn't a single Democrat in this race or any race that I'm aware of that's running on anything different. And we are squandering, in my opinion, an enormous opportunity to do some transformative good through legislation that is being stopped by a senator like Joe Manchin. And I'm not criticizing him. I'm simply saying I would vote differently. So if that makes me anything, it's not, I don't believe it's a moderate to derail your party's and president's agenda.
All right.
It doesn't even make the point. That makes the exact opposite of the point.
He's such a funny, like, sorry, go ahead, man. I don't want to steamroll you there.
Well, I'll just say, like, much is made about Fetterman's mental issues and his stroke and all that stuff, and I have proudly said, like, I think it's good that people that deal with those issues have representation in the Senate. None of that bears on this. I think everything I'm about to say is pre-stroke, pre any of that. The guy is beneath the dignity and beneath the intellectual capabilities of someone that should run for office. And the only reason he has the position he does is because he's from an old family that is used to that sort of thing. Because and only somebody that comes from stock that owned slaves in the 1750s, as Great Grant pointed out, feels that willing to insult your intelligence like that. As that note said, that you put up, numerous times he has explicitly said he was a progressive. That thing that he just posted was him saying, well, whatever you want to call it, I guess people are calling it progressive, but actually I think it's just Democrats. Like, yeah, he has a DSA, former DSA, maybe, spokesperson or comms person. Adam Gentleson was our majority reporter because he wrote something in The Nation about, the progressive stuff. It's like, it's just like he's insulting to your intelligence and he doesn't give a fuck. So yeah, I the thing is with Fetterman is like, it's not so much of a bumster because he's, like you said, Ben Burgess pointed out the progressive accept Palestine thing. I wouldn't have predicted the let's make a vote about Title 42 or make a deal about Title 42 with him, but not really I'm proud to be here tonight with Bernie Sanders, Bernie for Fetterman. Yeah, right, exactly.
Progressive values have been the heart of my campaign. Right. That's 2018. Right.
Yeah.
No, and I mean,
go ahead.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying it's like, I totally agree. I mean, that's why he didn't make the cut at the end, tight spot though. But, the thing is, like, even going back to this clip that he's trying to say, look, I've always been this way. What he's doing in that clip is, in fact, just being an extreme coward, right? Because what he's doing is saying, like, basically they might call me a progressive because of all the progressive things that I think, but maybe being a progressive is like moderate or whatever. It's just like this kind of like, I'm going to be sticky about what terminology you use on me so that maybe I can appeal to some people who would be offended if they heard me call myself a progressive, right? Very classic, this politics, right? That's what these folks all do all the time, which is, I'm just like a normal guy, moderate, I don't have any deep political convictions or anything like that. Which is like, whatever. Like, sometimes you do that in politics, and I would defend somebody maybe doing that if they felt they needed to in a race, right? Just as a tactical media move, right? But what's really funny about that is, like, effectively though, there's something a little cowardly about not just saying, hey, here's what I think, here's what I believe, right? And in that clip, he's very clearly being like, oh yeah, they call me a progressive. Maybe you think that's a bad thing, but I think all the things that I believe in are good, right? And so basically he's calling himself a progressive, but he's saying, well, you can call me whatever you want, I don't care, right? And then it's extremely cowardly later to use something like that and say, like, look, I've always been explicit about the fact that I'm not a progressive. But it's like, come on, man. The tone of that video is you saying, yes, I am a progressive. Wink kind of thing. Anyway, it's just unbelievable, character. Again, and it's just like, we always knew he was going to be bad on Palestine, but I think the thing that makes him even nastier is like the kind of like perverse pleasure he seems to take in it. Like in actually playing an antagonistic role. And now, as you were just saying, that it's not just like the kind of classic, progressive except for Palestine, as he's now moving on immigration.
Yeah, no, I mean, and on the question of Palestine, and these are counterfactuals that I think are probably they're limited in usefulness, but his opponent, Dr. Oz, is a Muslim. Now, he's a very pro-Israel Muslim. Nonetheless, he was challenged by the Jerusalem Post for not being explicit enough about what he would do for Israel in the campaign. Now, I'm not saying that he would be better than Fetterman on Israel, but I do think that, like, it is something to keep in mind, like, the balance of power there. And I think what I'm trying to say is I think it's good that Fetterman is, because I think it's good that the Democrats own that, so we can be very clear-eyed about the problem we have in this government right now. Because, I mean, I could see a situation where the Republicans have a higher portion of the Senate and are able to, like, give Biden whatever he wants with regards to all this stuff. I don't know. That's maybe less interesting because Dr. Oz isn't going to run again. I'll just say, like, I've never been an actual vote blue no matter who person, and I think this is as good of a excuse as any. Like, fuck John Fetterman, man. Like, I'm and yeah, like the
fuck the Democratic Party. Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, I'm sorry, like, not to be, but, like, at this point, it's sort of like, okay, I mean, I'm forgetting who said this, but a kind of Palestinian commentator was saying, all these people are saying, well, it's like, remember that Biden is, better than Trump. And somebody says something along the lines. It's like, like, what are we talking about here in scale? I mean, like, you're talking about, like, one less or more person would die. I mean, at this point, I mean, Joe Biden has fully embraced the mass slaughter of people in Palestine.
And how can you even make that point? Like, I don't know that that's true. Like, you might have some opposition if Trump was in, like, at least just nominally. But now,
from all the whiny liberals who are making excuses for 100%. Because 100% true. That wasn't going to come from the right.
I don't know. You need Joe Biden coming out and saying, I don't know if we have those. Like if BB's going for it, which it looks like he fucking is. Having a liberal standing up and saying, actually, I don't know if you can trust those death numbers. Actually, Israel is the most careful when it comes to casualties. That's more useful than Trump saying, these guys are good at deals. Like because one of those is ameliorative or like it puts people at ease. You have an entire, like, sort of cohort of resistance liberals being trained into a Zionism that is akin to fascism, as far as I'm concerned. As far as, like, how do we deal with certain populations that we control, we have a colonial relationship to? This is like they are going back to watch Battle of Algiers and saying, actually, no, the French should have stayed there. Yeah, torture. Yeah, put those people down. And that's because of, like, the partisan situation. So I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Like, if Oz was in power, maybe the balance would be slightly different, and you wouldn't have that democratic, I mean, I don't know.
But here's the point is, like, I think, like, sitting around and, like, twisting yourself into knots, thinking about, like, all the different circumstances that could be happening if this person or that person was in a position. Is unhelpful. Nor do, like, and I still don't agree with the kind of thing of saying that necessarily, like, Democrats and Republicans are the same, because they're not. But what I think is just explicitly clear, what I've known for a long time, and I just think, like, just needs to be said and just needs to be accepted, because it's a hard reality for a lot of people, is that both of these things are extremely bad and are just unacceptable. And anyone who is still doing this kind of thing, like, you need to line up and dedicate yourself into supporting these folks, these warmongers, people like Joe Biden, right? Because, like, the fate of democracy rests on it, the fate of immigrants rests on it, the fate of the globe rests on it. That's just a shameful argument at this point, because what that does is it tries to sweep up this fundamental issues and problems with American politics under the rug, be they Republican or Democratic side. So the point is not to get yourself into some silly thing where like you can't look at the world and see differences or anything like that. But it's also to put it back against this hysterical anti-democratic argument that comes about every single time there's a fucking election in this country, where you were told you shouldn't be criticizing, you must support, you must line up behind these kind of characters, because the fact is that people have been right for a long time, is that both of these forces are extremely dangerous and anti-democratic, and in fact deadly to millions of people around the globe. And to sit here and continue sitting on your high horse and talking about, oh, well, you know, if you don't support this person, then that means you support that, is bullshit, because we are literally watching the counterfactual play forward, right? Because this is, you know, if it was the other way around and Trump was the president and all these things were happening, people would be like, oh, well, these folks who didn't support Biden, that's why Israel, Palestine, literally we're living through that counterfactual right now. And it's being shown correct that like Joe Biden would administer the same kind of brutality when it comes to Israel, Palestine, as much as he's willing to administer the same kind of brutality on the United States-Texas border. The Texas-Mexico border.
Easy there.
I know. I'm getting too excited. Did you see that A24?
Oh yeah,
That's what's in my head.
That's on the Civil War movie that's coming off the A24. I will say A24 has one called The Zone of Interest, which is coming out. I don't know if you saw that one that's set in Germany.
Interesting.
And it's based on Martin Amos's novel, The Zone of Interest. It's one of his last
cool.
ones, and it takes place in Germany during World War II. And I remember the book being pretty fucking fucked up, because it's like German people being like, oh, that's an interesting smell, and it's like they're smelling the smell of the death camps.
Man, yeah, that's horrifying.
Like that. And I think it, you know, I'm intrigued by that, because I do think there are a certain number of people that are smelling that smell, and thinking the people that are pointing out that smell smells are anti-Semitic, and in fact they're just trying to stop an ethnic cleansing that's happening right now.
Well, on that note, let's introduce him. I think everyone knows who it is. Bumsteer of the year 2023 is none other than President Joe Biden. Joe Biden will be up for re-election in the next year in 2024. It's going to be an interesting campaign, as we have seen his support across the board crater. His favorability are just at historic lows. The loss of support from young people, from Muslim voters, is nothing short of catastrophic for the Democratic Party. And what has been really fascinating to see is that there's not really much in the ways of tactics on the side of that party to sort of deal with this problem, other than returning to the 2016-2020 style playbook of trying to browbeat people who aren't willing to support somebody who is backing one of the most horrific mass slaughters in recent years. Now, we thought it might be fun because, you know, you don't want to give Joe Biden too much credit. He can't do this alone. He needs the full weight of the American empire, the American state, staffers. He certainly needs the help of the United States military and the Democratic Party at large, and no doubt about it, major American corporations. But there are other figures who do play a big role in helping somebody like Joe Biden achieve his goals, and that is whiny little pundits. At least one of these guys, I don't know if you could call him a pundit, maybe a famous Twitter weirdo. But where should we start, Matt? Foreign policy or domestic policy for our little bumsteer tour with Joe Biden?
Well, we've been talking foreign, so let's just stick there maybe to start.
All right. As people know, Joe Biden's alleged bear hug of Netanyahu has basically given cover for the Netanyahu government to continue just an indiscriminate bombing and now ground war against the people of Gaza. The images that we're getting out of Gaza continue to be horrific, and it's horrible because you don't want to become numb to it, but it's every day just something that's unfathomable, something completely devastating. Continues. Israel regularly has been shown to be lying, trying to manipulate certainly the media, and a lot of people don't even need to be manipulated. They're willing to sort of take whatever narrative they're expected to. It's wild in the United States. There's an interesting dynamic in I think the Western world. Where, what are actually like sort of acceptable criticisms of Israel within Israel. Not, acceptable in the sense that, the way that Americans sort of react to some of the criticisms of like the settlers or things like that in this country, which is very much like I think been determined in Israeli politics. The right wing just has complete stranglehold on government politically, but you can get things published in mainstream papers, at least papers on the left. Where in the U.S., the mainstream papers, it's very hard to write anything about Israel.
Yeah, Haaretz has a bunch of, I think, either, if not like anti-Zionist, at least post-Zionist. I think Gideon Levy himself, like I think as a main one, would be anti-Zionist. And I mean, that's not to say Israeli society is extremely sick.
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm
Right.
trying to be careful. Yeah,
but I think like the difference comes from like we actually can have some. The idea that people know who Ben Gvir is a problem, because that is not the sort of thing that used to come into the word cloud over here, right? It's just bus explosion, terrorist, jihad, that stuff. We don't that they have far right messianic settlers that, you know, gun down people in a mosque and then say that's a heroic thing to do in the 90s. That's not something that like liberal Zionists in America ever really have to deal with, because the conversation would never get that developed, right? And now they do, though, is the problem.
And, you know, and you see the things that are happening in American government and American media. I mean, you have Joe Biden just straight up saying that he doesn't believe the numbers, the death tolls that are coming out of Gaza, which is just, I think at a certain point you can become desensitized to the insanity of America. And, you know, I think we were talking about that, especially at the beginning of this onslaught. There's like, there is a part of it that like makes you feel absolutely insane when you're seeing the U.S. government and Biden basically denying the death toll. You know, just absolutely horrific. Obviously, the support is unwavering. The willingness to continue sending bombs to be used to murder people in Palestine, unwavering from Joe Biden. You know, now we get this little kind of whisper at the end of the press, you know, conference where it's just like, oh, we're also encouraging Israel to make sure that they're only hitting military targets. It's almost worse than saying nothing at all at this point, because the United States government has plenty of military intelligence as to what the Israeli government is practicing when it comes to Gaza. And frankly, you don't even need to have high-level classified military intelligence to see what the activities of the Israeli government are in Gaza. And to sit here and sort of say, well, you know, we 100% support everything that they're doing, but also think that they should, you know, make sure that they do it in the right way. Is just truly disgusting when you're playing a massive role in defending and advocating for it. Now, talking about advocating for something, I wanted to, as we were saying, this segment, we're going to look at Biden through some of his boys who spent a lot of time defending him, making sure that he's okay. Somebody who has taken a very gleeful role in defending Joe Biden is none other than Mr. David Pakman, who we have done a few segments on this program about since the beginning of this conflict. And before we get whiny folks in here saying, oh, you know, you guys are taking it out of context, this is the shit he's putting out there on Twitter. These are the clips he's taken. He wants people to see. And let's see what he has to say.
I see all the same reports that you see. Young people displeased with Biden over handling of Israeli-Hamas war, so on and so forth. Disaster for Biden in 2024. First and foremost, you're telling me that those people who don't feel Biden has done enough are going to vote for Donald Trump? That doesn't make any sense, first and foremost. Secondly, it is actually remarkable the amount of success that Joe Biden has had here, pushing Israelis to allow aid into Gaza, warning Israel, don't overplay your hand, getting involved in the negotiation for hostage release. And that is major. That is tangible and that is major. And meanwhile, Fox News is talking about.
First of all, it's not the issue that people are going to switch their vote. That's not issue. No political side. This is the thing about Pakman, is he has infantile conversations for people who want to flatter themselves that they're getting some sort of nutrition. He will not engage with any sort of actual post-Zionist historian, any new historian. Maybe Benny Morris, because that's one Destiny will do too. They'll do the guy who recanted. But he won't engage with anything even political scientists say about this, which is not that, oh, someone's going to switch their vote. No, they just won't fucking show up. They won't turn out to vote because you know what? Actually, that's the thing in this country is you have to work. So, oh shit, am I going to go before work or am I going to go after work? You know what? I woke up kind of late today. I guess I'm not going before work. You know what? I'm kind of busy. I'm kind of tired after a full day at work. Maybe I'm not going to vote after work either. That decision is very fucking easy to make because I make that sometimes too. And I mean, that's just the reality. And so like, yeah, I think you should turn out to vote for Democrats like Rashida Tlaib and any sort of in an installation that can help them out.
Well, he doesn't because, he's been somebody who's been willing to sit here and, drag her through the mud. Yeah.
And what pisses me off about Pac-Man, among other things, is that playing the cop. I don't want to touch these issues because everyone gets mad when I do. If you're going to jump in to call for a congressperson that represents Palestinians at a moment that Palestinians are being ethnically cleansed, to call for her to issue an apology for something you know jack shit about, and then you just dropped later. Because guess what? Actually, it's not just that Israel bombs hospitals, which they did at that time objectively, and they'd have sense. They also bulldoze them. They also they bombed every university. That entire thing. One, it not only shows that Pac-Man is a bit soft on Israel, for instance, and like the type of war crimes they commit. He's also out of his depth because he didn't know what to expect. He had no idea that that's actually the reality that we're dealing with here. Israel will do shit like that. And so, yeah, it's easier to shut up about it. It's easier to say, what are you going to do? Vote for Trump? Maybe hostage.
Yeah.
You think Joe Biden's done shit for hostage negotiations? You know what? They did. I take that back. Joe Biden immediately, October 8th, had his guy, Anthony Blinken, put out a tweet saying, we agree with Turkey that we should pursue a ceasefire and exchange of hostages. And then he deleted that tweet. And guess what? Hostages have been under terrible conditions since then. And a little bit later, they released some of them, and then they restarted bombing and killing more people. So, like, all that stuff, it's infantile. That's where Pac-Man is on this issue.
It's 100% infantile, and like, the Trump kind of monologue there, I think is 100%. That's like pure Pac-Man, because that is like the only way that he can think. It's almost an ornament, right? It's like whatever's going on in the Middle East with Israel, Palestine is sort of like, what is this going to mean? Like, this is political analysis, right? What does this mean for the horse race? And that's something we're very critical on this show. Is like a lot of people, the only way they can think about politics is who's going to win this election and that election, right? Instead of actually looking at this from a materialist view, it's like, who is gaining power, who's gaining influence, what is happening in the world, what does this mean for everyday working people, right? And so, what is this going to mean in 2024 when people go and vote, right? Stupid, moronic bullshit. The second thing is just a straight up fucking lie to sit here and be like, Joe Biden it's, actually, you know what, Matt? It's not a lie. I take that back, because it would be a lie if if somebody didn't want what is going on to not be happening, right? But Pac-Man, I think, is very comfortable with Israel's bombing campaign. Now, he's going to say, I want them to hit the targets. There is no way that you drop the amount of munitions that have been dropped on Gaza and you can sit here with a straight face and say, we are targeting military targets. Bullshit. Lie to sit there and say that. So you accept it. Now, in all of this fucking window dressing, well, I don't like the right wing in Israel. I would like it if the left came back to power in Israel. The left doesn't exist in Israel because Israel is a settler colonial state that is obsessively pursuing a goal of eradicating Palestinians, and denying them human rights within Israel, and then denying them the very right to life in Gaza and in the West Bank. That is what the reality of the Israeli government is, because it can never do what needs to be done, which is to pursue a one-state solution with equal rights for people regardless of their ethnicity or religion. Wow. What a fucking liberal concept, by the way. A democracy where people have equal rights and equal vote. That should be the kind of shit that liberals like fucking Pac-Man are able to uphold. But no, we're going to make an exception for this ethno-state, and we're going to cry and whine about the consequences of our support for that. Give me a fucking break. You either take the position that Israel has the right to exist as a Jewish exclusive exclusive state, as an ethno state for a certain group of people, right? You say, I believe in that. That means that you have to support, because if you say you're for one group of people having political representation, having access to land, having all those kind of things, you need to exclude the others. This is the natural end to that fucking project. And it has been that way our entire life.
Oh,
Or
yeah, our parents. But.
yeah, that's true. Yeah. Or you take the position that we should be pursuing a humane solution to this, which is a one-state solution with equal rights for human beings. And to sit here and whine about the right wing comes out of these kind of policies. Just like in this country, by the way, continued whiny government from centrist neoliberals always mean that the far right is going to be in power, because liberals get into the government in the United States and they don't do shit, or they oversee massive crimes against humanity like Joe Biden is doing right now. And it creates very, very great conditions for all those young people and other groups to sit home and not vote for the Democrat, because why would I support somebody who's doing this? Don't you see these things are all deeply rooted and connected? But instead, no, instead of having a very serious conversation about this, let's have a surface level bullshit conversation about whether or not you think Trump or Biden is good. And also, people don't like Biden because he's old, right? Which is his new, like, kind of calling card, or defense of Biden. He's like, well, people say he's old, right? Friend, people say a lot more shit about Joe Biden than that, but.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is, like, okay, there is a member of the Israeli Knesset that I do support on the left, Ofer Kasif, the Hadash, the Hadash party. That's not who Pacman means. And so Pacman will not, and it's cowardly is what it is. We talked in the previous time, we talked about him in the post-game being, what is Zionism? Who can really even know? It means so many different things. It's hurled out for so many people, even insulting reasons. Well, define it yourself. And then tell you, and then say whether you agree with it or not. Because I think that is going to bring into, like, relief those questions of, like, okay, what? Because like this thing of, like, college kids saying apartheid. No, Amnesty International says actually this whole thing for our entire, like, for the last reports where we've been pretending like Israel doesn't control the occupied territories. We're going to stop doing that now, right? Like, and just point to the reality that, like, we're building walls between people and fencing them in places. And we're going to address that. Now, also the things in your constitution that talk about Jewish self-determination above all others, that put a lie to even, like, the nominal ethno-statey things that used to be. Like, all that stuff is old arguments. It is what it is. Like, Ilan Pappy and Tony Judd, they've been proven right.
100%. And we got another guy to get to with Biden, so we might need to move on. But last point I'll make on this is a little bit less specific to Israel, Palestine, and all this. But, I'm sorry. Somebody like David Pacman is very similar to somebody who's your boy at the Mug Club?
Crowder.
Steven Crowder. Or somebody like Charlie Kirk or Ben Shapiro. What, David, you're being extreme? You're being extreme? No, it's the same thing, where instead of actually engaging with, the organizations that you were just talking about, Matt, like Amnesty International or these historians, or, the journalists and thinkers and people engaged in this kind of work. What if instead I just would have operated, what are the college kids saying? Dude, what if I could destroy a college kid or a young person, right? The focus is always like, oh, we're going to get the 18, 19-year-olds. You're a media professional friend, I think you got the talent to sit and talk in front of a microphone, give people credit where it's due, right? Not the ideas, but certainly, you can do that kind of thing. Who you take up on as your kind of interlocutors, even if they're not on stage, even if it's just sort of like, oh, who am I talking about? Oh, people on the online, people on Twitter, or young college kids. It shows me that you're not very serious about this kind of thing, when that's the only people that you're engaging with. And it's the same fucking thing as when Crowder goes and wants to sit in the college quad and debate 18, 19-year-olds who are very passionate about a subject, and might get flustered or confused or bamboozled, again, with, like, outdated old school school arguments too on whatever subject it is. It's the same fucking thing, and it's pathetic in any context, but especially when it's being used to excuse somebody allowing mass slaughter of human beings, bombing of hospitals, churches. Jesus fucking Christ in heaven, man.
Yeah, and like, I'm looking like, does he debate? I don't know. Yeah, it's
you know, fair. We don't debate. It's you know, you don't have to debate. But when what you're going up against is the kids, even if you're just playing things or just talking about it abstractly, here's an argument to tell to your 19-year-old niece, right? Because maybe the audience is just uncles. I don't know, right? You know, it's just unserious to me.
Yeah, I mean, he's on a fast track to become Alan Colmes, getting invited by Patrick Bet-David and Tim Pool. but
well, let's go to the second boss, because let's talk about the economy. Because you know, I think rightfully a lot of focus has been on Biden's foreign policy, and it should be, right. It's disgusting what's going on. But this kind of subtle thing has been going on that has been, I think, would actually be taking up a lot more attention of people in left and socialist media right now. If you know. In what was going on in the heart in Gaza wasn't going on right now, which is that the libs are making insane excuses for the United States economy right now.
Exactly right. So the sort of guy, and I'm glad that we're making this about Biden, because I don't think Will Stancil has the stature to
That's
really
what I'm
warrant.
saying.
But I will just say, yeah, as a sort of person who represents this, the economy is good. What's wrong with you people? You know, here's a headline from Yahoo Finance: what Americans get wrong about the Biden economy. And the upshot of what their argument is like, look, GDP's grown so much, guys. And also inflation is not as high as it was, which doesn't mean we've seen any deflation. It just means that the rise is gone. And to be completely fair, something that's not mentioned in this article but is true is that low wages for low income people have seen some rise over the past few years, past year or so. Which is not to say everybody else has gone up. Just like, and I'll just say like, well, let's get to Will Stancil as an exponent of, before we get into what, like maybe some other indicators that you might want to look at before being just completely perplexed by the output of your very crude model of the economy. But I mean, just to give people an example of like what Will Stancil does here. He's got some great tweets from the past few weeks. Here's one. The overall increase in this is from a Philip Lewis tweet. Like, U.S. homelessness tied to soaring rents and loss of pandemic aid up 12% to highest level since reporting began in 2007. What does the Biden defender say to that? He says, Will Stancil, the overall increase in homelessness represents 1/50th of 1% of population. It's bad that this is happening. It's also an incredibly small sliver of population, but this news gets more coverage than increased earnings for 150 million Americans. Now, I don't know about, can I just take a stab at this before? How about, we talk about the income going up for the lowest wages of people. I would also imagine that those are the people that are most likely to be priced out of raising rents. So maybe, just maybe, that, like, and I'll just say, like, I am making more money than I ever have in my entire life. Well, pretty much, right? When TMBS was going, I was making a little bit more. But anyway, guess what? I am way less. I am way less confident about my financial situation. Just given like and it's clear, it's just rents. Like, if I lose this place, you know how awful it is to find a new place in New York, let alone one that isn't going to take like $3,500. Like, I mean, let's just go through a little bit more of these before we dunk on in too much. I mean, I could go off. Here is him. Yes, this is what's so maddening. We are in the middle of a huge rise in wages of low-income people, a big reduction in income equality. But the online quote left is behaving exactly like upper middle-class consumers, complaining prices are too high, largely because labor costs more. And now, does he think that all these? It's not just the online left who's asked if they think Biden is doing a good job. And I promise you, the online left does not have that kind of sway. I work for one of the, bigger, like independent online left sort of things. If we could have this sort of effect, I mean, Jesus, I would love that. But go ahead, David.
No, and like, no, I mean, like the left thing, whatever. I don't give a shit about that. This is a whiny fucking guy. They get mad because they go on the computer and they just see people and they're not in the party, so they're mad, right? Whatever. The whole thing here that connecting high prices to wage increases is one, a conservative argument inherently, and is also factually wrong. Again, for somebody who likes to be the facts guy. One thing, if you do spend any time looking at this guy's stuff, it's very apparent the dude does not read very much. Oftentimes is sort of digging into sources that he doesn't understand, which is something that you can do very well on twitter.com. But when you look at inflation, the most recent inflation, in like 2022, for example, one of the arguments that the right wingers were saying, well, people are demanding more money. People are demanding more money. And that's what happens when people get paid a fair wage or higher wage. Costs go up for everybody. And actually, that's why minimum wage increases are bad, because you raise the minimum wage, prices go up, things get more unaffordable, and then those wages can't keep up, and it creates a death spiral of higher prices. Well, the fact is that what happened in 2022, and there's just tremendous amounts of data on this, is not that labor costs push prices up for things, but rather that corporations across the globe recognized that they could charge higher prices for the goods and services that they provide. And do you think that they did that, Matt? Yes, they did that across the board. And, this is why people were terming it the greedflation crisis instead of the inflation crisis, because it was such a naked example of the power that a lot of these corporations have over the market, because more and more pricing power has been consolidated in a few groups. They pursued that. So prices went up across the board for most things. And again, it wasn't because, the actual cost of things, became untenable, particularly because of labor power. If anything, the fact is that there were still, knockdown effects from the pandemic shutdowns, that caused a lot of things to go up. But once they started charging prices because of those issues during the pandemic, they were like, man, people will pay a lot of money for a toothbrush. People pay a lot of money for deodorant, right? Well, why? Because people need these things. And they just raise the prices on everything. And it's very, very convenient for anti-labor advocates to sit there and say, look, prices have gone up. Oh, if you see wages for low-wage workers have gone up a little bit, well, that's because and prices have gone up. And it's not true. And look, here we have progressive super smart boy Will Stance, or whatever the fuck his name is, basically sounding like a right-wing psychopath. Because he wants to own the pro-labor people on Twitter. I mean, look, this is sort of what you get when you spend your time surrounding yourself around people who are advocating for Joe Biden in 2023.
Yeah, I mean, this so much explains like what we were saying when we're talking about landlords for UBI. Like, you can't just look at like something like wage growth in the among lower income people and be like, oh, well, the problem's solved. Good. Like, there's an entire new set of problems that those people are dealt with by the people who are sucking them dry already. Just a few. This isn't Stancil, but it's Stancil brained. This is pointed out by Scarlet Red. Daniel Day Jewish points out, I don't really buy the tied to soaring rents part. Most of the homeless issues I've seen would not be solved by rent being $1,850 instead of $2,300. And somebody, Antelope Guggenheim, says, I literally lost my housing because my landlord jacked my rent up from $1,250 to $1,550. There's Daniel DeJewish responds, sorry to hear that. Yeah, I've seen this a lot, but I guess where you can find something cheaper or not depends on the market. And like, are you not understanding what you're fucking saying. The word, first of all, I don't understand like the hubris of like just getting online and talking about homelessness and why people might experience it. You know what? I think it might actually have something to do with, all of a sudden I have to pay $300 more a fucking month to stay here. Like, yeah, that might. What do you think? What else? I mean, well, I know what they say is like drug addiction and shit like that, which is, again, like you say, a right-wing propaganda talking point. Michael Schellenberger, the fucking Twitter Files plant, wrote San Francisco, which is all about how actually don't worry about the rentiers, don't worry about the landlords in this. It's actually all these people are just addicted to drugs. Well, you know what? Who has a higher addiction rate for drugs than San Francisco is West Virginia. You know who doesn't have the chronic homelessness issue? West Virginia, because housing is more affordable there. It's simple. And so yeah, that's one more thing. Here's another. This is where the thing about Stancil though is like I've blocked him. And I actually only see him now if people, because he's frivolous and stupid.
I might have blocked him too, so yeah, we're catching up on the lore.
Here is the type of thing he says, like, you know, somebody says, Will Stancil is proof that no such meritocracy exists in America. If it did, nobody would know who he is. Absolutely right by J. Pizzle 604-70785. Will Stancil writes, the only reason you know who I am is Twitter, where I stand on the strength of my views and my background means nothing. You hate me because I've climbed into your head based on nothing but your faction's own ideological weakness. I am your lack of merit come to haunt you. I love how
that's yeah. Well, there we go. I'm a fan now.
He also talked about fascism. John Gann says it does not grow automatically about fascism. Fascism does not grow automatically as a rise to a set of economic conditions, but fascism is a response to a social crisis. It cannot convert people to its ideas without seeming plausible. Anyway, it talks about how like economics actually do have something to do with if fascism is on the rise. Stancil, I mean, fascism is obviously pretty strong right now in the U.S., and we are not going through any kind of social crisis beyond the fascism thing. Honestly, even that, like, I think we have a right-wing problem. This is where I agree with Bessner or Adam Tooze or Richard Evans when they talk about the dissimilarities between fascism, which is like extremely militarized society, which is not the type of like Chile's going patriots that are doing the truck protests. But anyway, but the last 40 years of America life are such a social crisis, stretches a term beyond any useful meaning. The last 40 years, I could make a strong argument that like coupled with a rising awareness of like just like rising inequality and lack of opportunity, we have significantly less income mobility compared to our neighbors to the north in Canada, for instance. And like the idea, I mean, he wants to argue that this is purely idealistic, right? Without knowledge, he continues, would anyone have looked at the richest big society on earth getting richer? Like, who's all getting richer? While its politics produced the contestants between people like Barack Obama and Mitt Romney and said, yes, this nation is clearly primed for massive riches and fascism. Like, there was a fucking housing crisis at that exact moment, you moron.
Oh yeah, no, what the fuck? I mean, that's insane. I mean, we like stopped building houses for like 4 or 5 years.
And went through austerity. That's one of the things Joe Biden was supposed to have learned. Actually, if I was a propagandist for Biden, I would be leaning on that thing of like, okay, at least he's done Keynesianism relative to Obama.
So apparently it's not helpful to look at 40 years, right? Because there's nothing, too much has changed. There's something very, very significant that happened that I think actually dramatically affects American politics and the American economy, even through the Joe Biden years, which is the gap between productivity and typical workers' compensation has increased dramatically since 1979. Huh? What's 40? What's 2023, man? Oh, interesting. Seems to line up actually pretty well here. And as you can see, for people who aren't watching the video, there's this graph here from the EPI, which shows the gap between productivity and a typical worker's compensation. So it means people are becoming more effective, more productive at work, creating more value, and yet they're taking less and less and less and less of it home. I mean, I wonder if that creates any kind of scarcity or difficulty for everyday people in doing things like paying for food, doing things like engaging in the economy. Oh, GDP's up, Matt. GDP's up.
Yeah, we're all richer. Congratulations, GDP's up.
We're
all
more
richer.
productive. We're more productive than we've ever been before.
Why could this
And
be a problem?
we see effectively, the thing that's really notable about this graph is not just that they don't line up, but it's almost like a straight line for the wages, right? If you control for inflation. I mean, it is
controlled.
minuscule increase over 40 years. So yeah, no, I actually do think that 40-year comparison might actually tell us a lot about the social state of America. And the economic state and the social too, right? It's just amazing to watch these guys continue to just be so fucking wrong about this, because I think that if the economy, the GDP was up and things were growing and people were feeling more confident about their future, that some of those fundamental issues were starting to move, then yeah, maybe there might be a little bit of credit to give to Joe Biden and an argument for him. But if you're experiencing the same kind of spiral that people have experienced their entire fucking life, if you've been a worker for 40 years, or you've been a worker for 10 years, whatever, man, I got a raise. Nice. Oh shit. It's less than inflation, right? Oh, now everything costs more. Yeah, maybe that's why all these people aren't giving this guy a lot of credit for GDP increases. Yeah, it's, I mean, what the fuck else can you say at this point?
Well, I mean,
we can say. I'm sure he can say more. Yeah, I'm sorry, I spoke too soon.
This is a post that got deleted. People get mad at me for not engaging with the literature, and it's true. I rarely do, but it's because I trust myself to be able to think relatively soundly about the world from a clean slate. But I do not trust myself not to mangle any kind of academic field I'm not expert in. Now, Carl Bayer has a good.
That's awesome, bro. I got the cleanest dome in America right now.
This was prompted by this carlbayer.com post, which goes into Will's psychologism. Consider Will's argument for psychologism. He doesn't call it what it is, but that's what it is. He writes, quote, "There are clear observable shifts in public opinion, as if a gust had occurred and pushed everyone in one direction all at once. If something causes those shifts, the question is what? If you treat politics as a psychological process, it's easy to quickly arrive at the conclusion that the forces that are going to have the strongest effect on voters are the barrage of direct messages they receive, messages that more or less directly tell people what to believe." Carl continues, "Is this true? In their study of assessing the effects of media coverage on the economy on aggregate economic public opinion, Boyson, Heighton, and Lynn conclude, quote, "First, we have demonstrated that the mass public's collective economic attitudes are tethered to economic reality to an extent greater than reported in previous research. The lion's share of consumer sentiment is explained by economic fundamentals. Recall that the saturated model accounted for 85%. So yeah, that's why Will was a little bit sensitive about whether or not he reads anything. Just, I have some numbers here just to scan through. I'm like, but first, I like, to the extent that like I also don't look at metrics. When I kind of go by vibes too. I think Orwell was going by better vibes in the 40s when he wrote this in England, Your England, about attitudinal different changes over the course of the 20s. The underlying fact was that the whole position of the moneyed class had long since ceased to be justifiable. There they sat at the center of a vast empire and a worldwide financial network, drawing interest and profits and spending them on what? It was fair to say that life within the British Empire was in many ways better than life outside it. Still, the empire was underdeveloped, India slept in the Middle Ages, and dominions lay empty, with foreigners jealously barred out, and even England was full of slums and unemployment. Only 500,000 people, the people in the country houses, definitely benefited from the existing system. Moreover, the tendency of small businesses to merge together into large ones robbed more and more of the money classes of their function and turned them into mere owners, their work being done for them by salaried managers and technicians. For long past, there had been in England an entirely functionless class, and living on money that was invested they hardly knew where, the idle rich, the people whose photographs you can look at in the Tatler and the Bystander, always supposing that you want to. The existence of these people was by any standard unjustifiable. They were simply parasites, less useful to society than his fleas are to a dog. Orwell continues to say that, in the 20s, there were thousands of people knew this. by the end of the decade, millions of people knew it. And why? Because you had a Great Depression. And all of a sudden, people's attitudes towards the economy that they grew up in changed. Now, that is to say, like, if Will and all these people were right that all the metrics look good. And of course, that is not true remotely either. Just recently, they restarted student loan payments. 40% of
I saw this. Unbelievable.
40% they have not made a payment yet. And that was a high priority, according to the Biden administration, to get that restarted. That was a choice that he made economically. And I have this thread started in July 6th, 2023. I said, before you say the economy is good compared to the G7 or whatever, you have to state your income and monthly rent and mortgage. And I'll just say, like, a number of these things. Renee at hashtag ceasefire now. The supply of rental units affordable to lower and middle income renters fell by 3.9 million over the last decade. That's one bit. New York City rents are breaking records and are expected to keep growing. That's another one. That's us bitching about it. Branko going into it. Jeff Stein, who's been very good on this, one of the reporters at the Washington Post, who's actually not snowed in by any of this. What's going on? Homelessness on the rise after steep pandemic era drop. Of course, that drop, I think, might be overstated because I don't think they were. I don't think that the collection was going on as seamlessly. But anyway, there's also moratoriums on evictions and stuff like that. Farasufra Forest. The average rent in Brooklyn is up 11.9% this time last year. Of course, not every place is Brooklyn, but most places, and it's not all. I know the rent has softened a little bit in Austin, but that's from. Again,
no, I was going to say. I mean, it's rough still. You know what I mean?
Still,
yeah. No, I mean, like it's like there has been. I mean, we need to get into it. Like, there's been some kind of drop, but the thing is, like, that went after a period where, like, rents were almost
rise.
Going up like 100% over the course of like a decade. Do you know what I mean? So it's like,
so okay, yeah,
it's not the fastest growing rental market in the country anymore. It still has priced out an entire group of workers in less than a decade.
Yeah, inflation is down. That doesn't mean there's been deflation. Is a pretty important thing. Here's another one. The average family health insurance premium is up 249% since the year 2000. That's great. I'm sure everyone loves that. Only 24% of Democrats say they are better off financially under Biden. Maybe they just are looking at TikTok too much to actually understand, their bank accounts. Bidenomics, Stephen Semler, for some people, financial insecurity by fiscal year. More than 40% of Americans are facing hardship. That is up from 32% in 2020.
Oh, nice.
There's another Stancil thing there. He's upset. What is he upset about? Whatever. Keep finding the number of Americans who didn't have enough to eat over 2 1-week periods increased by 40.8% between September-October 2021 and September-October 2023. So yeah, maybe people are just too on TikTok to know to fucking go buy groceries. This stuff it's maddening. It really is. Like, I mean, obviously there's maddening stuff going on with regards to Israel, Palestine, and the type of like lies you have to deal with. This is every bit as insane to me. Like, how can you say that? How can you say, just look down and it's like, can we let, even if like every working person of every income, even if their wages had gone up like for an extended period this whole time, and none of the other stuff had been raised, to me, you want me to be super happy about that? How about we let that go longer than one fucking business cycle? Because right now at the head of the fucking Federal Reserve Bank, you have somebody who's raised interest rates in part, I mean, because of the amount of bold activity you're seeing from labor and what you've seen in the labor market. And not entirely about that, but I think Americans are becoming more and more aware that is something that the Fed keeps an eye on. And so what it is it's partisan propaganda. And, we've dealt with it in depth here, but ultimately it needs to be dismissed.
100%. And let's not forget, the guy at the top of it is Joe Biden, who is Left Reckoning's 2023 bum steer of the year. He'll be asking for y'all's vote soon, folks. It'll be interesting to see what you have to say after what he has put so many people through, and watching that party continue to not really fundamentally change despite all of the exciting narratives that are being produced in the media, which all are trying to do the same thing, right? You know, Matt, you know, this is a good writer's trick when you were a newspaperman yourself back in college. What does your editor always tell you? Show, don't tell. Well, one thing that has become abundantly clear is that maxim has been lost in a lot of American media, as the vast majority of stories from a lot of these folks is like, well, you might actually think that things are bad, but actually they're good, you know? And I don't know. I think, yeah, I'm sorry. In politics, there's something, I think the vibes test is something that should be respected, and not sort of treated as people being irrational. But yeah, maybe looking at metrics like, oh, GDP's up, or even, oh, inflation isn't rising as much as we thought before. Has people's fundamental reality changed? No. In fact, a lot of people are feeling anxiety about whether or not they're worse than just 2 years ago, which is a horrifying thing to think about what people were going through 2 years ago. Yeah, you're probably not going to get a lot of sympathy and love from folks after that being their experience.
One final one, Gabriel Zuckman. Low wages are growing, but the declining disposable income over 2021 to 2023 due to the phase out of COVID policies completely swamps that. Not crazy to believe this is behind a lot of people's discontent with the economy. Now, and like Gabriel Zuckman is not like some like Jacobin writer. I think he's works with Thomas Piketty, right? So it's like this is out there. This is the state of like what the only people confused about this are Democratic partisans. That's the only people.
Well, any final words, Matt, on the year of 2023?
Good riddance, I think.
Yeah, I think that's about right. Apart from very exciting stuff in labor, a lot of really dark and miserable things. Here's to the future and what's up next. I think people are moving. I think there's a lot of things to be very frustrated and angry about, but I'll tell y'all, as I say all the time, never lose hope, because the fact is that a lot of folks are really getting organized, getting engaged, and, you know, the future can be ours if we're willing to fight for it. So fuck all these people. Let's leave them behind in 2023 and on to building up an actual strong left and labor movement in this country that will hopefully do a lot of good things for us and for the rest of the world too.
Absolutely. Peace out, folks.
All right, friends. Happy New Year.